Say this or?
We're ready.
Was
We ready, Lisa? We're ready.
Okay. Welcome to the Metro Plan Orlando TSMO meeting. I will call this meeting to order. My name is Shad Smith, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. This meeting is an in-person meeting, and it is important for all TSMO members to attend our meetings in person. So all committee members are asked to be present in the Metro Plan Orlando boardroom for us to have a quorum. Members of the public will also be able to participate virtually, and we encourage them to do so. There are 2 public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public who want to speak need to fill out a comment card and give it to Lisa Smith. And those attending on Zoom who want to speak can use the raise hand feature on the Zoom screen. We also accepted comments by email and phone messages before the meeting. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Eric Hill of the Metro Plan Orlando staff for the agenda review.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members and folks that are joining us online. Good to be with you this morning. Do have a few items that I wanted to share with you. First item is our traffic signal retiming program. We are halfway through this year's work, getting towards the end. And so I just wanted to put the message out, the word out that, or a request that you start looking at corridors and intersections that you'd like for us to start looking at next year. So we can get a jump on that. The next item is Metro Plan Orlando had its federal certification last month. And I want to thank everyone that participated or that sent a comment in on our behalf as part of that. We really appreciate it. And again, it just continues the great partnership that we've established over the years. Couple items. The first one is a sad note. Kathy Goldfarb, many of you know this lovely lady, have been with us 13 years, but on Monday was her day of retirement. So she is no longer going to be greeting you at the front or sending you emails on the TSMO agenda or requesting that you RSVP. And we are going to miss her. I know personally she's been a strong asset for me in my work in getting things accomplished, as well as getting information out to you. So she will be missed. And if we can just offer her a round of applause, because I don't know, she may be online listening. So if we could just give her a round of applause. Thank you. Now, while we are losing someone, one of our staff, Jason Satorio, is gaining a member of his family. This is Henry. Jason and Hannah's newborn, and you see he's pretty dressed for the occasion here. He's got a great onesie on, and I know it doesn't show up all that well here, Mr. Cinnarins, but that is Eagles green.
Oh, okay.
So we have this New York Giant Philadelphia Eagle thing going over here. So that's Jason is actually an Eagles fan too. So congratulations to Jason and Hannah. The next item is a new presentation that we want to add to our meetings, and it's safety moments. That seems to be something that many organizations are starting to do now as part of their agendas, is offer a safety message. And so we want to offer a safety message with our meetings. So I'm going to ask Mike Wilson if he could provide us with the safety moment.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everyone. Before I get into the moment itself, I want to talk about, I want to give this thing some structure. And we want this also to be not just something that we do at our committees, but it will actually be part of our Vision Zero plan as part of our outreach. So it's many of the concepts that you'll see during these meetings will somehow end up in perhaps a different form out in the public media realm. I want to start off with, there's probably familiar with the safe system approach, which is the underlying principles of the Vision Zero approach. We look at improving safer people, safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, and improve post-crash care. But to kind of narrow it down to a messaging and a crash reduction standpoint, I thought I'd fall back on what we used in our pedestrian and bicycle safety action plans, which were safety success factors. So we look at, can we improve predictability and visibility? Can we manage conflicts and speed better? And since we're also expanding out to all modes, not just non-motorists, vehicle control then becomes an important factor as well. So we're going to be pulling from these 5 slices of the pie chart. And if any of you have ideas to fill in any of these, I'm certainly welcome to them. So shoot me an email or catch me afterward, whatever. But moving on to our first safety moment, and that is about speed. This is a PSA from Victoria, Australia. And I'll let you know that in Australia and many European countries, they are a lot bolder when it comes to showing things graphically. So that you'll see that here. So basically just showing the importance of small changes in speed. And I've provided a handy metric to English conversion, since it will be, although this audience shouldn't have any problem doing those conversions in your head, right? So, but anyway, if you will, Lisa.
Our job is to reconstruct serious crashes and get evidence that may be used in court. Now, this young woman landed here with serious head injuries, following the huge force that threw her over 6 metres on the impact here. We can work out she was hit at 32 kilometres per hour by analysing the car and these tyre marks. So we started braking here and first saw her when he was travelling at 65. But let's change one small thing. Now he's doing 60 when he sees her. And this time he hits her at only 5 kilometres per hour. She'd just have a bruised leg. And we'd never have been called to this incident.
So a really great illustration on the literally profound impact downstream from small differences in operating speed. So that's why we've developed our speed management network, and why that's going to be a really important component of our Vision Zero plan. So thank you, and bear this in mind.
Do you feel anything?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have one other item. We are joined this morning by Maria Tahira, who's with the City of Orlando. This is her first meeting with us. Just wanted to acknowledge her. So, Mr. Chairman, that wraps up my announcements. I'll now turn it over to Lisa Smith to do roll call.
Good morning. Barden,
Here.
Bates,
Here.
Carson, Doig,
Good morning. Here.
Edie, and Mr. Chair, Alyssa, she is present on the virtual side, just an FYI. Castelletto for El Hassar,
Present.
Elliott Moore, Barkessa, Giovinazzo. Here. Tahira for Herschelman. Here. Poole for Homiani.
Here.
Hudson. Here. Jameson. Dredge. Kane.
Here.
Krug. Lim.
Here.
Margrath.
Here.
Pulliam. Here. Price.
Here.
Richmond. Sanders.
Here.
Sonorans.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Toussaint. Yeargin, Wetzel. Mr. Chair, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum physically present.
Thank you, Lisa. We will now hear public comments on the action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold your comments 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment? Leilani.
There are no hands on the virtual side.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public attending in person that wish to make a comment?
I have not received any, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any written comments or phone comments that we've received?
We did not receive any, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we will move on to our action items. We have one action item today. So, and it is just the approval of the February 2023 TSMO meeting minutes. So we are looking for, well, any members making a motion, please state your name. So we are it's in tab 1 of your packet, which is on your tablet. So we were looking for a motion to approve.
Make a
please.
motion to approve Ramon Centerins.
Second that, Sanders.
Okay, got a first and a second. Do we have any comments or any discussion? Seeing none, this is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So the motion passes. So that is all for our action items for today. We have 2 presentations for today. We will hold questions until the presentation ends. The first presentation is by our own Mr. Eric Hill of Metroplan Orlando. It's an update on the TSMO master plan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members again. This is an update on our TSMO master plan. This is follow-up on the update I gave you a couple months ago. We've continued to move and make progress on this project and have some good results. This work is being done by Kimberly Horn, and Mike Vadu is with me this morning. He's serving as, he's got 3 lifelines for me in case I get challenged here with not being able to provide a comment or respond to a comment or answer a question. So in true Eric Hill fashion, I'd like to start with a story. And Mr. Chairman, you know, you said you don't read, or I won't say you don't read, but you don't like to read that much. And I hope I'm not characterizing that in the wrong way. I hope not. But this is a manuscript that I read last year. And the way I found it is Dr. Peter Norton, who did a webinar, and I think I sent it out to everyone. And Autonorama is his analysis of technology and transportation, starting with the 1939 World's Fair. And there are several things in this book that I picked up on. There's a lot of information, but there are a couple things that I picked up on that I think has some relevance to our TSMO program and technology and transportation. The first one is, since, and I'm dating myself, but going back to the early 90s, we started with intelligent vehicle highway systems. And there was a phrase for technology and transportation before that, but it was before my time. So it went from intelligent vehicle highway systems to intelligent transportation systems and evolved into TSMO. But since that time, we have spent more money at the federal level in funding associations, in providing grants, in providing research opportunities. We spent more money on technology and transportation than was spent on the interstate highway system, to build the interstate highway system. Now, some would argue that, well, at least we got an interstate highway system. You know, what have we gotten for this investment in technology? Just one of the factors that he provides. And since the 1939 World's Fair, every 20 years, we've been talking about autonomous vehicles. So at the 1939 World's Fair, it was the first time they introduced the whole notion of self-driving cars. And it was always 20 years into the future. And since then, it's always been 20 years in the future. And at this point, we're still kind of like struggling with, when are we going to introduce? When is it going to happen? When is it going to become a reality? And the last one I want to make note of is technology is always seen as a way to move cars. Why is it always about the vehicle? And I want, and I hope that what we come out of our TSMO master plan with will undergird the notion that technology can go beyond the vehicles. We can find other opportunities for using technology in transportation besides moving cars. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna get off my soapbox now, come back to reality. So our steering committee, we've had 4 meetings. We still have 2 meetings left, and we're still on schedule to complete our work by September. This is a list of the tasks as well as the dates that we have met to get the work done. You see that we still have the 2 meetings left. And this is the framework we've used. Today, I'm going to speak about the needs assessment work, just looking at the gaps that we've been able to identify and make recommendations on. And once we complete this, we want much of this to roll into the update of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So the needs assessment was developed based on the steering committee members, existing conditions, the regional ITS architecture. And the architecture is, to draw an analogy, is like a supermarket, it's like Publix. You go in there and you look at what technologies are available, and those are the ones you select to use. We've gone through, or at least the department has gone through an update of the architecture, and that's when they start to identify emerging technologies that they want jurisdictions, agencies to start deploying. Then we did some agency interviews with each of the steering committee members. So the gap analysis that we went through looked at current status, desired outcomes, and then the delta. What are those gaps? And we translated that into categories: infrastructure and systems, strategies and operations. Infrastructure and systems, those we want to consider and certainly look at as projects that we can identify for our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Strategies and operations are looking at what work you're doing at your own jurisdictions to develop your own TSMO programs. Agency and organization is workforce and some marketing, if you will, making your agencies and community aware of TSMO and what it means, how it's being used. And this is not something that we dreamed up. We'd like to say we discovered something new, but we used AASHTO model, and that's where we came up with these 3 categories. So the first one, infrastructure and systems. Assessing how we evaluate the performance of our system is one of the recommendations that the team has made. The department does a good job of already doing this, but how do we translate that and move it down to the local jurisdictions so that we can start assessing how well we're doing with technology? And not just to move cars, but how we're using our technology to improve safety, reliability, and then some resiliency in our transportation system. The next one, traffic signals, that we do a lot of work in, but there's certainly some opportunities. Seminole County, I like to use them as an example because they use a lot of, or they were the first ones to start using automated traffic signal performance measures to see how the systems actually work, not on the back end on how many cars we've moved, how many incidents we've been able to mitigate, but if the system is working. That's one of the things we want to try and encourage our local agencies to do more of. Preemption, priority. This is looking at how do we preempt our signals so that we can move transit vehicles. But also, how can we use that in a freight capacity to move freight vehicles? And this is more something that would benefit Orange County with the freight movement that they have. The priority is more of how do we get emergency vehicles to situations or to incidents. So that combined with the traffic signal updates, these are the type of projects we want to try and develop. Transit technology is there's the vehicle aspect of that, but then there is also the customer service that can be developed in terms of fare payment, information to the customers that can be developed, and that relates to the preemption. And looking at corridors where we can develop more technology that's going to make our transit system more efficient and ineffective. The last item here, pedestrian and bicycles. The agencies, when we did the interviews, you may recall that was the question I asked each of you. Because that goes back to my soapbox. How do we use this technology to do more than just move vehicles? How can it benefit pedestrians, bicyclists? How can it have more value? How can we leverage this? And I believe there is a grand opportunity for us. Now, the image that I have here, goes against what I was saying earlier about it's all about the car, but this is the ecosystem that we want to create. And it's based on connected vehicles, because late model vehicles and vehicles that are now being produced, they're communication devices. And as we develop more roadside units to pick up data from these vehicles, as well as communicate with these vehicles and create that environment platform that the vehicles can talk to each other, talk to pedestrians, talk to bicycles. That is the ecosystem that we want this master plan to enhance. The next few items or images here are maps of each of the counties showing the gaps, fiber gaps within the counties and jurisdictions that would certainly enhance our traffic signal systems, make them more reliable, but also looking at certain intersections where we can provide cameras or devices that help motorists understand conditions that they are now involved in. So this is Orange County, Osceola County, Seminole County, and the city of Orlando. Now moving on to strategies and operations. Recommendations are, as you are scoping projects, integrate or include in your recipe or the ingredient or the TSMO ingredient as you develop projects. We want you to do more with that in terms of how you procure these projects. Performance, we believe, leads to investments. We now in the industry in the 21st century is data-driven performance. And we see that as leading to the investments that we need to make. Training is something that we can't overlook. The Federal Highway Administration, ITE, and ITS America, they have combined their resources to hold a operations academy once a year. It's 2 weeks of immersion in TSMO. I'm a graduate. Jeremy Dillmore is a graduate. Mr. Laffey from Osceola County, Alex Laffey, he's a graduate. Laura Brock, who was a former employee here, is a graduate. And it's a great opportunity. And the good thing is it's free. You do have to pay your travel, but the hotel stay and all the training is free. I would encourage you to consider it only if you, again, it's 2 weeks and it's in Baltimore, Maryland. I know since the pandemic, they have been doing it virtually. I don't know if they have gone back to in person, but it's a great opportunity. So can't overlook the training because this technology changes quite a bit and we have to stay up on it. Collaboration is one that I think that we have a good hold of. This committee is an example of that. We also have the TSMO consortium. And I think that everyone is working well together, especially with the department. Interoperability is one of the areas that we can certainly do more in, especially as it refers, as it relates to security, because we're dealing with technology. There's always opportunities for hacking. At the last consortium meeting, we had a representative from the city of Orlando do a presentation on how hackers are getting into networks. So that's another area. Oh, the last item, agency and organization. Workforce, how do we, as many seasoned employees start to move out, that institutional knowledge goes with them, how do we backfill that knowledge? And one of the challenges that we have here with workforce is compensation, benefits. That's a challenge. I can tell you firsthand, that's a challenge. So how do we address that? You know, I have to defer to the agencies and building awareness within your organization, telling your story, telling the TSMO story. I mean, Metro Plan Orlando, I tell the TSMO story all the time. And I think that's an opportunity that we all have, is to tell our own stories. So how can we make everyone more aware of this? And on the back end of this work, that's one of the things we want to do, is have a campaign where we can tell the TSMO story. So in terms of next steps, we are going through a prioritization process where we're going to develop a way to prioritize these projects that are identified. This is a draft of the criteria. Some of it relates to our past NTP, and it's a work in progress. We've had some discussions on what areas we want to look at, and this will continue to evolve, but it is one of the next items that we are going to complete. And here's where we are moving, the direction we're headed in, to do the draft prioritization approach. We want to do a pilot. I went through something similar to this for the Central Florida MPO Alliance, which is all the MPOs in District 5 on prioritizing regional TSMO projects. And I developed in association with Gannett Fleming, we developed a prioritization process and we piloted, and it didn't go well. And so we went back to the drawing board, and now we have something new. And it was something that I presented at the last consortium meeting. And develop frameworks and strategies. And our next meeting is June 27th. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and I am ready to answer any questions. And again, if I can't answer it, I'm going to ask Mike to answer.
Thank you, Eric. Do we have any questions or comments from anyone?
Yeah, Eric, thank you so much for the presentation. And definitely a lot of thought and effort has been put into it. I guess that my question is in terms of using the existing infrastructure and how do we put some synergy in terms of the resources that we have. For instance, the fiber optic connections, I know that you are looking at the inventory. So it seems that certain agencies, they have a minimum number of strands that they're using, but there's a lot of capacity that is unused. So my question is, if, is there a way perhaps to take a look at the infrastructure from each agency and to develop a cohesive system and see where there is flexibility, that there might be some other opportunities to use that fiber that will require interlocal agreements.
Mm-hmm.
So is there some discussions about it, or pretty much every agency for its own?
So there's collaboration, which I mentioned, and I think we have that. And one of the things, another thing I learned from that Autonomorama book is that you got low technology and you got high technology. That's the spectrum. On the low technology, we're talking about interagency agreements. And that certainly is something that we can recommend and can develop. Now, it will require a lot of discussions amongst this group on how that happens, but certainly the members of the steering committee can help us develop the process for doing that.
Okay, and the other question that I had, I don't know if other agencies, they're facing these challenges, but in Orange County, we have both underground and aerial fiber optic. So there's a lot of development, and even we have the 811, Sunshine One call and whatnot, all of a sudden, we just find out that one of our fibers has been hit, and we're 100 signals down. So what is happening? So what measures have we taken? Because developing is happening, the way that we protect our fiber, they're not encased in concrete. So obviously, and we don't go really that deep. So although we have this connectivity and things, it seems that we're victims of the developing. So how do we address that problem that it seems to be a constant challenge, at least for Orange County?
I don't have a response for that. Perhaps it's something that the developers have to be responsible for. And again, I'm just guessing. I don't believe that's an item that we're going to make recommendations on in this project. Because again, that's a local issue. But I won't negate that from being part of the discussion. We do have members of the steering committee here. I mean, I'll defer to Charlie perhaps, and Lindsay on how they deal with that. I know it's not just an Orange County challenge. All the other jurisdictions also have. So
Okay.
I don't know, Lindsay, if you want.
Osceola County deals with that a lot as well. In 1 week, I think we had 3 different hits and it took, a lot of the network down. I do try to reach out to the developer right away via, I don't know if you guys have them for permitting and things like that. So I try to hit the permit department and try to get a hold of who the prime is. And there is an FDOT spec that, kind of guidelines how they should fix it, and that it's not considered utilities, it's considered infrastructure, which is a little different. Because a lot of times they'll be like, well, they weren't located, and so, they're not too worried about it. And then oftentimes the county just has to eat the cost of it, which is really tough, especially if it happens over and over again. So that is definitely something I think we should discuss, at a future time, just because I know that it's an impact, a major impact for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I'm making that comment based on your category for the reliability. We might have that infrastructure, but if we get the cuts, then we're not gonna have that reliability. So maybe that is part of the larger discussion as far as how we can address it as a region.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to this slide of strategies and operations, project scoping. Perhaps that's a subsection of what comes out of this point, is recommendation on how to address that. But how do you budget for these technologies and these mishaps is something that's being proposed. The project scoping, the procurement, as well as how to manage the incidents.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, also similar with that is, I'm just following up on them. Because I've heard a lot of the stories of these different utilities, these fiber companies coming in and they're hitting everybody else's fiber and other stuff. I mean, they're hitting everything, but that resiliency on that seems to be pretty critical, in even redundancy on these systems. I mean, these systems are, if it goes down, then we lose connection and control of intersections and other things. And it seems like actually it's a pretty big deal and it's happening so much. I mean, urgently happening right now, but I don't know. I would think it's something we really do need to make sure we're looking at. Might be something to revisit a little bit. So,
Okay.
But I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
Hi, this is Steve Kane from Osceola County. I think I share the sentiment on both of those. So with respect to resiliency, I know there's a lot of grant opportunities out there now that are focusing on that. And oftentimes it's, get it out of the floodplain type of resiliency, but perhaps there's some TSMO projects that could get some funding to build that redundancy. Because I know when Ian hit, DOT was looking to the county to see if we could put boots on the ground to tell them what signals were operational because they lost connectivity, but they weren't sure if the signal was actually down. So having that additional backup could help. And as far as the development community, perhaps there's a conversation that could happen at the with the development review department and with your right-of-way occupancy permit group that would allow them to kind of break out the ITS infrastructure separately, since it's not owned by a separate utility company, and say you're going to bond that, or you're going to designate it, or there has to be some ordinance that says this has to be repaired, maintained, whatever the case may be, to try to mitigate some of those. And so by having more policy clarity on that infrastructure may help enforce repair and payment for repair of that facility, rather than just having to eat the cost.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that is, these comments will go back, and Mike is here, he's hearing it as well. But as part of that category, strategies and operations will bring some language to that to address these concerns.
Yeah, and I mean, even what he said, the bonding and other stuff, we've even run some of these guys that they come out there and they're like, oh, okay, how much do you need? So, they're almost ready to write a check for whatever they damaged. They don't care. And so then that's that much more of, okay, we need we need redundancy, because they don't even care that they're hitting it. So there's that part. So it's not just protecting it and getting it paid. It's also the making sure we have some other backup or way to go around it. So yeah, I think that'd be good. Charlie, you want to say something?
Yeah, we're having the same issue. Not necessarily developers, more of these new internet companies coming in. Developers, it's kind of, they have to get a permit, so they're smaller, easier to manage. It's these companies, we had Verizon a couple of years ago, was hitting us all over the place, and now it's WOW is out there. And the problem is they just say, we're going to put fiber in the county. They're not given a specific roadway or dates, and we have 2 full-time locators and we can't keep up. So we're actually looking to amend our county code to say that you need to give us, realistic schedules of where you're going to bore and put in conduit, so we can make sure it's marked. Because if you just say we're putting fiber in the county, we obviously can't keep that marking up to date. So that's a issue we're having. But we spend a lot of our CIP money to create redundancy. So if we take a hit, hopefully there's another path to keep those signals up. So we've been focusing on trying to do a fiber link or 2 every year to add to redundancy, but that's one way to kind of combat that. But yeah, just these internet companies recently have been really taking a toll.
Just to go off Charlie said, one thing that we did in Castleberry is we're restricting the permits now. So we're reducing the amount of area that they can actually try to permit for these internet companies down to, I think we went down to 1 mile. And if that doesn't work, we're going to keep restricting it down until we can get a hold of them, because that's the best way we were able to find a way to get them to, at least we have eyes on them now at all times. And that's the best way we found.
Well, I think it was good discussion. Anybody else have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate this perspective, because again, it will help us beef up that strategies and operations section.
Yeah, no, that would be good.
Good.
So, well, thank you, Eric. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. So, the next presentation we have today is on advanced air mobility. It's by Yu Zhang. I believe hopefully I'm saying that right. She or he, is it she or he? She. I thought she. She is with the National Institute of Congestion Reduction, NICR, at the USF, University of South Florida. So is she set up and ready to go, Lisa? Okay, great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm very glad to be here to talk about the advanced air mobility and what we have done at USF. So please, next. Actually, I can share my screen if you want me to control the slides. Which will
Yes,
be
go ahead, Yu.
okay. Do you see my screen?
Well, excuse me, Yu. Whilst Yu is making this transition, I invited her because I met her at USF, part of the Garrett Morgan Shadow Day that I participated in. But also, whenever I'm giving presentations, the number one question I always get is, when are flying cars going to show up? And so my response is typically, well, we're surface transportation, that's aviation. And then it's also, well, we can't even get autonomous cars really to work, but now you want flying cars. And so I thought it would be good just to have this presentation. So I just wanted to give you that backdrop. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Thank you. That's very true. Okay, so for myself, I joined the USF in 2008, and since then I started the Smart Urban Mobility Lab. And actually, I had a connection with FAA when I was a graduate student at UC Berkeley. So after I joined USF, USF also become a part of National Center of Excellence for Aviation Operations Research, supported by FAA. And as Eric mentioned, as the chairman mentioned, that I'm currently directing the NISA, which is National Institute for Congestion Reduction. That is the National University Transition Center supported by US DOT. And recently, I would say earlier this year, we started a new research program on the Qatar. So Qatar is a research center initiated by state legislature back in 1988. And we have many different programs. And then under this, we started this AAM research program involving faculty members from different departments. I will just go through this. I shared the slides with Eric. So for anybody who are interested, you can get the slides from Eric. And this is talk about in some lab, we work on advanced air mobility, shared automated vehicle. And I continued working with FAA on air transportation management and also the resilient cities. I heard some questions regarding the resilience from the previous presenter. So I think that's very important given that we're a coastal area. So our research is supported by many different federal agencies as well as the local cities. And I mentioned about Qatar Center for Urban Transition Research and National Institute called NISA. So for NISA, we focus on multimodal congestion reduction strategies through the real-world deployments. And then for the new AAM, we have three kind of areas. One is a passenger AAM, which I will elaborate a little bit more. We also work in the cargo AAM, including the parcel delivery using the drones. And then we also cover the UAS applications. So here I just listed several of our faculty members, but we do also have a big graduate student body to support this research program. So what is the urban air mobility? When we think about helicopter, actually, we have seen that a lot in the city, either, transporting people from the downtown to the airport, like what's going on in New York, and also maybe the tourists, for the tourists, they can do the sightseeing. But why back in 2017, NASA actually started this terminology? That is because now we have new aircraft technology and also the mobile internet. All these disruptive technologies can enable this new mode, which called urban air mobility, that is envisioned as a safe and efficient aviation transportation system, can transport passenger and goods. However, shortly later, the community realized that not urban area needs this type of air mobility, but this could be used by, the regional transportation, by the rural area, suburban area that's not served or underserved by existing air transportation. So what are the advantages of AAM compared to some of the existing transition nodes? When we look into the commercial aviation, think about from Tampa to Miami, we probably have 2 or 3 flights every day. And think about from Tampa to Palm Beach or others, we do not have those commercial aviation. So this in emerging AAM actually could provide short haul trips and also at more frequent services. And potentially the fare will be lower than the existing commercial aviation air ticket. Another one is compared with the helicopter, the future eVTOL, we call it electric vertical takeoff landing vehicles. They're powered by electricity, and with the distributed propulsion system. And it's less noisy, more reliable, and also it's smaller than it needs less space than helicopter. And also because it's electricity powered, supposedly, it does not emit any air pollutant during the operation. And when we compare with ground transportation, we could, the future AM could utilize the low altitude space, so avoid the road congestion and provide another alternative and most of the time faster solutions to the potential users. So there could be different applications of AM, first response, ambulance, police, firefighter, and air commute. It could be privately owned in the far future or on demand and shared services. So there are many different potential applications. And we can imagine for the passenger AM, it's very much similar as the station-based bike sharing. You can go from your starting point, your home, your workplace, and then go to a vertiport. Sometimes we call it mini airport. And then you get on an eVTOL and then fly in the air, get to a destination vertiport, and transfer to a ground transportation where you can go to your final destination. So these vertiports are considered as stations in this shared and on-demand service. So in the early stage, actually, those eVTOLs will be supported by a pilot in the cockpit, but it's a single pilot instead of 2 pilots in our existing commercial aviation. And there are a couple of companies are going through the certification process with FAA, and what they're certifying is a single piloted, distributed propulsion systems powered by electricity. So according to the updates from the OEMs in 2024 or latest 2025, they're going to go through the certification process and then they can get into the market. And at the early stage, we could foresee a regional air mobility network as shown over here. And it will provide the air mobilities for the users and the tourists in Florida. So although there are a lot of advantages of this emerging AM, but there are also lots of challenges of embracing this new mode. I mentioned about certification. Another thing is airspace. When we have these small aircraft, it actually make our airspace more complicated. We need to think about how the different users will share the airspace and how that could be handled. So at the very beginning, they will be considered as a general aviation. And if they get into restricted airspace, it will be controlled by air traffic controllers. Other than that, they can file the flight plan. But in the future, we will have to transfer from our existing human in route air traffic control system to more automated air traffic management system. And also there's challenges in operation, infrastructure, and also the community in terms of awareness, in terms of how it actually integrates with our existing multimodal transportation. So NASA put those challenges into 5 areas, which is shown on this page. And at USF, actually, we tackle on several of these areas and on some specific research problems. So, for example, I will elaborate a little more on the integrated network design demand estimation. That is more of finding optimal locations of vertiports and also simultaneously estimate what could be the potential demand. And we also look into how to come up automated energy efficient and flight planning, which is like a pre-departure, given the information, we can come up with conflict-free 4D trajectories for the operators who want to have the services. And we also develop simulation tool that can mimic the future operations of shared AM services. And from there, we're working on some impact analysis, the mobility impact analysis, energy and environment, and also equity impact analysis. And I will mention later, we have ongoing project with FDOT that kind of puts things together so we can come up with this design and evaluation tool for advanced air mobility. So I just use this opportunity to elaborate a little bit more on this particular study, which is integrated network design and demand estimation. So I mentioned that infrastructure, vertiports, is considered as a station that connects the ground ground station and air ground station. So those are critical physical infrastructure. Now, of course, we need the digital infrastructure as well, which is automated air traffic management system in the future. So the functions for this vertiport is a final approach, takeoff, passenger landing, charging, because it's electricity power, so we need to have some charging facilities. And comparably, the functional space would be much simpler because we do not expect the passengers spend a lot of time there. They would turn around really quickly. So as a researcher in the academic world, we always, look into what has been done and what are the gaps in the existing literature and how we can advance the knowledge. So we did some literature review and find out some research gaps, particularly in this field. And then after that, we realized that we need to consider the interactions between the network design and travel demand, travel mode choice, which means that the location of vertiport will attract a different group of passengers. And the passengers, when they consider which transition mode they choose, they need to consider where the vertiports are located, how quickly they can access the vertiport, and how easily there's another destination vertiports close to their final destination. So these two parts need to be considered simultaneously because there's interaction, although in the existing literature, it has not been done yet. So our study is looking into this. And first of all, we obtain the LiDAR data and we create a 3D map for the whole state, and we focused on the Tampa Bay region. I will skip this. This talk about mathematical programming that we used to solve the problem. But I'll focus on this case study. So we use the Tampa Bay region as our case study. And in Tampa Bay region, because we have activity-based modeling, demand modeling. So our previous study actually did like a one-day simulation to obtain in one day how many trips, individual trips could occur in our Tampa Bay region. So we use that as our input data for analyzing the network design and demand estimation. And the individual data including origin destination, the travel time, travel distance, travel mode, travel purpose, and the departure time. And we actually obtained a lot of the trips. And to reduce the complexity of the problem, we first did some filtering. So we say, okay, only travel time larger than 30 minutes and the distance larger than 10 miles will be considered potentially will use AM. And that leads us to 266,000 daily trips in Tampa Bay region. So we have a lot of parameters that we plug into our mathematical programming. We look into different modes like eVTOL. And for the pricing scheme of the eVTOL, we actually followed what Uber has suggested before in their white paper. Uber lately, that part is acquired by the Juby Aviation. So in their white paper, they talk about that could be the base cost for each trip and then the unit cost dependent on the distance or time. So if you look at here, if we talk about like 30 miles trip, it will be $30 plus 2 times 30, and in total would be $90. So from the Uber, they talked about this is similar as like the Uber Black, the price of the Uber Black. But of course, if you're on the ground, then your travel distance will be much longer than in the air because in the air it's more direct. So with all these parameters, we apply this case study and we find out, given us a specific set of parameters, if we want to find, 30 vertiports in Tampa Bay region, this is how it will look like. and it will track to 532 trips. It's a very small amount compared to the 266,000 that we're considering in this problem. So it's 0.2%. Now, of course, the OEMs operators talking about in the future, if there's autonomy, automated eVTOL without a pilot in the cockpit, then the price could be reduced. So
The slides, I don't think are lining up with what we're showing.
Oh.
Yeah,
you do
so-
not see my slides?
we have them, but we are not, I don't, you're talking about, I don't think is where we're at. They're not matching up, so.
I'm on the 24 right now. Do you see that? Slide 24, there's a number at the bottom.
Yeah, we don't. Do you see a number on your screen, Lisa? Here's 24. Okay,
Yeah, so I'm
Okay.
talking about.
very good. Thank you. That's
I'm
better.
sorry, but it's a different 24.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're significant time savings for AM passengers.
Oh, okay. I think my I talked to Eric maybe during our communication. We tried to delete slides. Maybe I delete it slightly differently. So I'm on the optimal vertical location and triple locations. Yeah, sorry about that. So as I mentioned, it will attract some trips from the ground term station, but it's not a lot. And in the future, if the AM become more affordable, then it may attract more trips from the ground term station. So let's go to next is a significant time saving. So in this case study, we have seen a lot of the users actually could save almost about 30 minutes for the trips that they are making. And that is quite significant compared to the total travel time. And we have done a lot of sensitivity analysis to look at, okay, if we change the price, how the outcomes will be different. If we change, the efficiency of the intermodality connection, which means to go from the ground term station to air term station, if the transfer time could be reduced from 5 minutes to 2 minutes, then how many more trips actually will attract from the ground term station. So all that information is in the paper that I listed, but due to the limited time, I will not show that in this presentation. So the next slide just to summarize, for this particular study, what we have done. So we could find the optimal location of vertiports for a study region. We could find the passenger allocation, which means what two vertiports they're going to go through if they take the AM. We also can identify the ground term station they're going to use to access to and egress from the vertiports. And then from system-wide, we can determine divert the demand and then save the travel time and reduce the system generalized cost. And also when we do the sensitivity analysis, we can also figure out the optimal number of the vertiports to save the region, which means if you increase more, you are actually not attracting more demand. So it gets to some certain like a saturation status. So go to next slide. It's just a refresh your memory about, different studies that we have done. And then next slide, I want to mention the ongoing project with FDOT is now we look into the state demand modeling, not only just the Tampa Bay region. And the statewide, it's a 4 steps modeling. So we have added the AAM network into the state demand modeling. And we, put the vertical locations, we create Airlink, and also we create the ground connections. And for the Airlink, we also do airspace feasibility study to see what are the restricted airspace and also the high density commercial airspace activities that the eVTOL need to go around. So this is very comprehensive project. And in this project, in the later stage, we will develop the different modules to evaluate the impact to the regional mobility, the environmental impacts, as well as equity impacts. So it's a 2-year project. So we're about 6 months into that. We have finished some of the tasks, but we will finish the project probably by spring 2024. And currently, we still use what we call the Tampa Bay Region Plus, which we consider 5 districts, 5 counties in District 7 and 2 counties in District 1. So I have heard that, for example, from Miami-Dade, they're very interested in this too. So the same methodology actually could be applied to many different metropolitan areas in Florida. So I will stop here and thank you very much for your attention. I welcome any questions.
Do we have anybody who has any questions or any raised hands? Anybody? Oh, doesn't look like we have any questions here.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Go ahead, please. Ramon.
This is Ramon Sentiments, Kissimmee Airport. Just question regarding major challenges. There is a current pilot shortage, and then also as well in the future, for the pilots that are retiring. Is the FAA addressing that currently for pilots for the eVTOLs? But then also too, what kind of operations will the eVTOL pilots fall under? Will it be a 135 charter operations, or will it be a 121 for a carrier?
That's a very good question. I think there have been discussion about that. So currently it's follow the commercial aviation. It's probably 120, the second one, I think. They have to fulfill every requirements as a commercial pilot. And because this, the future advanced air mobility actually would be driven mostly by the private sector. So I'm currently serving on the FDOT AM working group, and it involves about 30-ish experts, including people from airport, from OEM, from the city of Orlando and Miami-Dade, those local agencies and people from FDOT. So we talked about that in the workforce development. For now, I think the OEM and slash operators, they will put a lot of effort to recruit and training the pilots, and so that they can meet the requirements of the FAA as a commercial aviation. But in the future, we do not know what could happen. And also in the future, the autonomy will kick in. So if the future eVTOL become automated, then there will be the ground operator. And for ground operator, the requirement will be lower. Maybe it's similar as like the UAS operator right now. So there are lots of uncertainty about how the regulations and the requirements will change.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or raised hands? I do not see any, so thank you very much, Dr. Chung, and we will be moving on.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
before we
sorry,
move on,
Eric, please.
I will make this presentation available to everyone because as Dr. Chung mentioned, there were additional slides that got into actual modeling and computations that are used in making the forecast. So I will pass it on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. So that concludes today's presentations. There are common presentations, and there is one to note here. There's a presentation on safe streets for all that will be coming up during the TAC meeting. So we're asking those to stay and attend those if you're not on both committees. Also a presentation on Best Foot Forward annual report. And there's a presentation on their Sunshine Corridor status update that is going to be postponed. So if you're looking forward to that, it's not going to be this week or this month. So wait for a future date for us to get that update. So also there's general information in your general information tab number 2 in your agenda packets. You please review that. Also note that our next TSMO meeting is scheduled for May 19th. And also do note that Metropolitan Orlando board meeting is May 10th. So, and the rest of them are listed in your agenda packets. So if there's, oh, we're gonna do agency updates, right?
Member comments.
Member comments, sorry. Member comments, I know there was some of those needed to come up. Mr. Wetzel?
It was more of a question than a comment, but there are several available data subscription services out there, and I'm sure many of you may get emails of all this probe data that you can buy and subscribe to, and there's several out there. There's Urban SDK, Streetlight, Here, INREX, Clear Guide. One of my soapboxes is I really don't have enough time and staff to look at the data we get ourselves from our own internal systems, like our, signal performance metric system and our Bluetooth system. So I've kind of been leery of some of these, but we were looking at Urban SDK and had a couple demo meetings with them. And so I'm kind of seeing if anybody else is subscribing to any of these services and if they see any value in it. One of the things, the Urban SDK, for example, was, volume and speed data. Can it replace the money that we're spending with a consultant to do our annual counts and our various speed studies that we're having to do for traffic calming? One of the issues I see is that it's, it's probe data, so it's not every vehicle. When you typically go to do a speed study, you're putting tubes down and looking at the speeds of all the vehicles over 24 or 48 hours. Probe data, they're claiming they're getting about a third of the vehicles. So the speed is accurate because it's tracking that one vehicle, but yet it's not all the vehicles. So I'm kind of leery of that, and some of the, like the AADT values that we provide to our residents and businesses and things. And, we just do an annual count in the peak, February, March. And then what this service is saying is that it can expand on that and then provide, monthly values. But we would still need to go count our 400 plus locations so they could calibrate their model. So the subscription itself seemed pretty reasonable in cost. It was 30 to 40,000, and we easily spend that in our annual counts and stuff. So I was just kind of wanted to poll the sister agencies and seeing if anybody else has subscribed to this, seen any value, provide any insight.
It's a great question. Anybody have anything?
So this
Oh.
is Osceola County.
Osceola County.
We've had conversations with INRIX about some of their data. We have met with them and reviewed what they have in the county for DOT. And apparently it's one agency pays and everybody else can share in that. So if DOT is covering the state roads within your jurisdiction, you can access that data if they've already selected that signal. So they have two different segments. They have a signal analysis tool, and then they have a corridor analysis tool. So we've been looking at the signal analysis just to kind of, supplement our ITS group and or TMC, and then also to make signal timing adjustments at critical locations. So it's, I think, 50 intersections minimum, and it was $25,000. So we haven't fully executed yet, but having looked at the DOT intersections, we felt like the information was fairly helpful. But to your point, the sample size is fairly low. They do have some projection tools, and it does update weekly. So it's not real-time data, but it is fairly current. And there's several different ways to analyze the data, look at different movements and look at peak times and, trends and stuff like that, how much it's increased, kind of get a report card overall of the intersections that you're looking at. So I felt for the price point, it was a great supplemental tool. We're still going to do our annual counts. We're still going to have the traffic management center trying to parse out, issues in real time. And we'll still have our signal timers, trying to get out there and optimize things that they see just based on boots on the ground. So I think as a supplemental tool, it's a great resource, especially that we can then share with Kissimmee and St. Cloud if we have intersections in their jurisdictions without additional cost.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's like with the SPM services, right? The NRICS, Clear Guide, things like that. I know the state is paying for their roads, but right, so then it's up to the agencies. Hey, do we want to, glom onto that and pay for our own roadways and stuff like that? And do the cities want to do it and things like that? So, right, that's further things to consider.
Charlie, SDK, I finally got a meeting with them on Tuesday after they tried to contact me a lot. I finally gave them a slot. So that's gonna be my first time talking to anybody.
Okay, when I was talking to them, they were almost sounding like if we got this 30 or 40,000 for the county, it would include all the city roads as well, so. I'll just ask for a check from you to cover your portion.
Let me see how this meeting on Tuesday goes.
Some
Just 15,
Chad.
I just gave him 15 minutes.
Maybe the county could make some money off it. Anybody else?
Yeah, Charlie, in Orange County, we just had a meeting about 2 weeks ago. So that was our first contact with them. So the pitch that they were selling is pretty much what you
The
had
urban
discussed.
SDK, same.
Yes. And with them also, they did mention, and I don't know how factual that is, that they have a contract with the MPO. Or they alluded to that. I don't know if that is true or not, but that they were saying that the price of the 40,000 is because already they are providing that services in the region. So we had the same questions, whether we can replace our annual counts with this type of approach and how reliable that will be. I mean, we're spending probably $200,000-$300,000 in counts yearly, and that is part of our concurrency management. So for the next meeting that we're going to be having, we will include our transportation planning division as well, because we have a lot of questions and inquiries, and just to see what we can do. So maybe as a supplement, can be reliable. Yeah. Also, there's limitations, and I think that part of our concurrency management, we need to make sure that we meet the guidelines, and I don't know if this will be able to give us that information as it is requested or required.
Mr. Chairman, to answer your question, Bertha, it is true that we do have a contract with Urban SDK, and Taylor and Laurent's coming to the podium.
Thank you.
Because Charlie did ask if he could kick the tires on our program, so not sure where we are with that.
Drafting a response to your email as we speak. So I'm sorry I haven't been able to send that just yet. So we do have data relationships with Urban SDK, Streetlight Analytics, as well as some WeJo data that we've been using ourselves. So Urban SDK, we've really used them as more of a data visualization platform than anything for real-time or close to real-time analytics. So I can't comment too much upon those, but we could have some offline discussions about what we have learned about their data procurement and what information they're showing and where that's coming from. So you can kind of help make those decisions as well. Streetlight Analytics is similar to INRICS that we were talking a little bit about earlier. That is also looking at probe data. They're switching from cell phone GPS location data to connected vehicle data at the moment. So it's going from a large volume of probes with cell phones to a smaller volume of connected vehicle probes now that people are turning off. I don't want to share my location on your cell phones. So there's a little bit of technology changes that are happening right now, and we're happy to talk through any of the programs that we are using so you can see what might work best for you as well.
And in terms of the technology, it is moving to the connected vehicles. And I know we've used the WeJo data for our traffic signal retiming evaluation, but the sample size is small. And perhaps, again, a fuller discussion on this is warranted because it does factor into our TSMO master plan. Because performance measures, I mean, that is one of the things that we're calling for in the master plan. And how do we do that? How do the agencies do that? And so, again, that's in addition to what we need to probably beef up in our TSMO master plan, is addressing that question, Charlie. And again, in addition to that, we can do more exploration on the platforms that are available and the ones that we can deem as being reasonable for us to try and fit into our program.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, and everybody who participated in that discussion. There's a second public comment period. If any members of the public wish to comment, please use the raise hands functions and you'll be recognized. Or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll unmute your mic. After you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment? Ronnie? No?
There's nobody that I see on the virtual side.
Okay, excellent. Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to make a public comment?
I
Lisa?
have not received any.
We have not received any. Thank you, Lisa. And are there any written comments of any kind?
Not
No.
at all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. So if there's nothing further from anyone, then we stand adjourned. Thank you.